Hello and welcome to this episode of Breck Buzz. Joining me here today is Mayor John Warner and our soon-to-be retired Town Manager Tim Gagen. Tim, this might be a little unusual for you. You've probably done hundreds of these episodes, but sitting in the center chair.
Yeah, I'm totally confused now that I'm the right hand of the moderator, but I'll try to do my best.
Yeah. Just remember, I'm the one asking the questions today.
I'll try to remember that.
But for our viewers out there, as we were thinking about putting together this episode of Breck Buzz, we realized that this is John's last episode of filming Breck Buzz after he is term limited. So March is his final month as mayor with the town. And Tim has been with the town for the past 16 plus years. And of those 16 years, John has worked with him for at least 12 of those years. I think 4 in a council capacity and 8 as mayor.
Right.
And so I thought it'd be really fun to take a look back at some of our accomplishments over those past 16 plus years and kind of where we've been and where we've transitioned to during that time today. So
Sounds like fun.
Sounds like fun, yeah.
yeah, a lot to talk about. So we'll try to keep it concise.
Yeah. It's good you're doing this before we get too old and we can't remember anything.
Right.
Yes. I'm curious though, John, maybe you could start off. You know, it has been, obviously you've been in the community a long time, but when we're looking back at accomplishments, and I was looking back to 2000 when Tim started, you know, there's a lot of things that have evolved and that are different, but yet there's still a lot of things that are very similar within our community also.
Yeah, Rick, first of all, I was lucky enough to be on council when we hired Tim. I was on the, interviewed him. Our council was very impressed by Tim. We had several other good candidates, but we chose Tim, and he's been a keeper. It's been great to work with you, Tim. In late 2002, the then council, I had just gotten off council, and Tim decided to have this visioning session, or really a summer spent, looking at what Breckenridge ought to look like 20 years down the road. And we're almost there. And they created a vision statement. I think there's 10 or 11 catch sentences on it. Number 1 being to preserve the character of Breckenridge. And it really has served that council and the subsequent councils very well. This council is a real new council, and we still look to the vision statement of 2002. It mentioned sustainability, affordable housing, economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and once again, maintaining the character of the community, the historic fabric of the community. And it's been kind of our roadmap for the future. And it's still a living, breathing document that councils can fall back on. And the one thing that's still the same is we still have a lot of congestion in our community. I think we had 20 days of gridlock then, and now we have 25 days of gridlock. We have adequate parking supply, but for a lot of people it's hard to find. And the current council and the next council will be grappling with that moving forward. So a lot's changed, but one of our biggest continuing issues is still parking and congestion.
And as John stated, Tim, we actually adopted that vision plan in 2002, but there was quite a process that went on even into 2001, I believe, before we actually developed the plan.
Yeah, it was almost a year process that we really went through, and I got to give a lot of credit to Kate Boniface, who really kind of was the staff person that honchoed that whole thing. But the idea, and I think the new council embraced it very quickly because they were all fairly new. New mayor, Sam Mamula. Right. Sam wanted to make things happen, but he also wanted to make sure he had the pulse of the community, as did the whole council. So this visioning process, I think one of the great things about it is we had tremendous turnout. I remember over 500 people at least at one meeting, which was, at that time, we only had 2,800 people in the community.
Right.
So it was a huge turnout of people that were really interested in the future of Breckenridge. And it helped me because I was in my first couple of years. John was finishing up his 4 years, but the council was kind of new. And it really did set a roadmap. And to its credit, it never became a book on a shelf.
Right.
It became that living document that John talked about. And I think it's because we use it a lot. We talk about it during the budget. We've talked about it during different aspects of projects that we take on, and even the goals. When you go back and look at all the goals that every council set every year for the last 16 years, they always seem to highlight some part of that vision plan. And one of the unique things about it that I think was great, when you look at other communities, which we have a chance to do, John and I, when we're on cast and things like that, when people don't have a roadmap, it takes a long time to get stuff done. Mm-hmm. But when you have that roadmap, we really move through things. It doesn't seem like we move through things, very fast, but we really did. And the accomplishments that came with that, I think, are just a credit to the fact that the council stepped back and let the community tell it what it wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And then the council said, okay, let's go do it. And even during bad times, we were able to get some stuff done.
Yeah, that was great.
Well, I want to use that roadmap as kind of our premise today for how we look back and talk about some of our accomplishments, and I think a great place to start, and something that's very near and dear to you, John, that's as part of that vision plan, is our recreational resources. Mm-hmm. And that was identified as something that is a value to this community. It's listed in the vision plan. And if we look back, and we've gotten some information recently as part of our open space report, and the council's going to see even more this next meeting, but maybe you could talk a little bit, because were you on like one of the original open space? Did you serve on the open space committee?
Back in 1997, 1996, there was an election to create a 0.5% sales tax, for the purchase and stewardship, preservation, maintenance of open space. Much of it in the backcountry, some of it was relief from development down in the downtown core, and it was a wonderful ballot initiative that Ellen Hollenshed and Jeffrey Bergeron put together, and it passed pretty easily. It created a lot of rift in the town, and then we had a full year of creating the business plan for what this would look like. So the whole year of 1997, I sat on the BOSAC committee, Breckenridge Open Space Advisory Committee, devising this business plan for BOSAC moving forward, purchasing, acquiring, maintaining backcountry access, trails, open space, etc. And in the last, since 1997, so 20 years, the town and the county have leveraged those dollars to buy about 3,800 acres of backcountry parcels. The town has used some of its own open space money to purchase parcels in downtown Breckenridge and help with the acquisition of park space, open space out by the McCain property on the north edge of town. But it's been a fabulous success. It even allowed us to have enough money to purchase a portion of the Cucumber Gulch area, which is up where the Breckenridge Nordic Center is. I think we bought something like 25 building sites from Tim Casey and his partners, and preserved much of the what you know of as the Nordic Center now. We also partnered with the county, the Forest Service. Tim and Gary Martinez led the charge in purchasing the B&B property, which is another 1,800 acres. Mm-hmm. I think we just paid it off, didn't we?
We just refinanced and just finished up paying it.
Mm-hmm. So it's been a boon to the community, and one of those open space parcels that we turned into a park was Prospector Park, which we just opened this past year. The Dudick family donated a wonderful sculpture for it. So this 20-year process, in the scheme of things, if we've raised $1.5 million a year, that's $35 million that we've raised and spent on acquisition of properties, and it's been a boon to the community. And then it's actually morphed into this fabulous trail building group. We have a trails department led by Scott Reed and Tony Overlock, who are out building trails. And I haven't had a chance to ride all the trails or walk all the trails because there's so many new ones. There's 55 miles of new trails in the last 20 years in the Breckenridge area. So it's really served our recreational and open space pursuits well.
And when we look at the vision of Breckenridge, and obviously John did a great job of summarizing a lot of what we have done with our recreational resources. I think we've seen a movement in the last, maybe 5 years or so to diversify that trail use too, and look at how we can have different levels of trails for our guests that come into town.
Success breeds its own unique problems sometimes. And what we found is that the system that the open space dollars have invested in have become so used by so many different users and every new mechanism, whether it be the fat bikes or the backcountry skiers or whatever, everybody is using them, and we now see conflicts. I mean, which is a good thing, but it's also a thing that you have to do to manage so that the experience is as good as possible. And our trail system is just a huge economic boom for the whole county. I mean, I remember they had numbers for the bike pass system, which we've invested somewhat of our open space dollars in, and the number of people that it brings to the county, because it's such a unique experience, is just one more tool that draws people here. But like I say, the challenges are going to be that we're so successful. How are we going to manage it, and how are you going to have different users use the system so that you don't have conflicts? I don't think we'll ever eliminate the dog problem, though many people are trying, with people not taking care of their pets and things like that. But it's still a wonderful system. And I remember back when I first started, one of our very unique characters in town is Turk Monopar, who was kind of the expert on the backcountry area. And we make fun of him because he always said, this is the last piece that we have to worry about buying. But it was never the last piece. But because of his knowledge and his donation back to the community of a lot of time and effort and not charging anything, commissions or anything, he was instrumental in bringing things to the county and to the town so that we could leverage those dollars as most effectively as possible. And it takes people, I guess is the point. It's just not me, it's just not the council, it's just not staff, it's other people that work with us and really help us facilitate getting stuff done.
And our open space and trails is really just one component of the recreational amenities that we're all about here in Breckenridge. And I think either right after you started or it was already in the works. I mean, we were planning an additional 9 holes at our fabulous golf course.
That's right. In fact, I again give credit to Kate Boniface, who was kind of started that project, and then we took it on and actually finished up the financing. But it did in fact expand our golf course to 27 holes, again designed by Jack Nicholas, expanded the clubhouse, and opened up that whole, and those are open space too. I mean, because they're not built on, they become a great amenity out there. And our golf course in a resort community remains extremely competitive because it's one of the best in the mountains. And we draw a lot of people because of that.
And was it 7, 8 years ago we started running a Nordic Center out there too? I can't remember exactly what year that was.
Yeah, it might have been more like
07?
10 or 11 because Scott Ewell came in as I think one of the concessionaires. Then he got out of it, and then we really took it over by the town. I think Gene ran it for a while, Gene Dayton ran it for a while, as he does the Breckenridge Nordic Center. And it's, I live a block away, so it's kind of my go-to Nordic Center. Fabulous, nice long trails, beautifully groomed. It's a great track ski amenity for the community, as is the Breck Nordic Center. And certainly Frisco has a great Nordic Center, but it was just one more thing on our menu that we could offer our residents and our guests. So the golf course really serves a dual purpose. And I think this last year, from a budget standpoint, we've came close
Pretty
to
close.
breaking even. It's still, there's still a little bit of a subsidy every year on a per skier basis, but we came close to breaking even. So it's been terrific. We've also seen in the last 3 years the expansion of Peak, or the Breckenridge Ski Resort with Peak 6, and that was a kind of a give and take relationship between the Forest Service and the ski resort. They came to the town, asked for a lot of advice, input, etc. And also in Tim's tenure, Peak 7 was brought online in 2002 or 3.
There was no
it?
development at Peak 8, Peak 7, or Peak 6
Right.
when I originally started. That's right.
Right.
But it was in the master plan.
That's
They
true.
did do the master plan right about that same period of time.
And we've got a picture of the gondola there. That was something that's happened in the last 15 years, thanks largely to Sam Mamula, our mayor back in 2000, 2004. He sat down and worked out a deal with Roger McCarthy and the then COO of the Breckenridge Ski Resort, and we ended up with a very nice conveyance system that moves a lot of people. It has created kind of a, you know how Vail has the clock tower, everybody knows where the clock tower is. Well, everybody knows where the gondola is in Breckenridge, so it's turned into kind of an iconic go-to place in the community of Breckenridge.
Yes, and I think that recreational resources is something. Obviously, it shows the power of our vision plan, keeping that as a priority. Council today and the new council that comes in, we're continuing to look at how can we improve upon our recreation center and our ice rink and all those other amenities that we have. So we could probably talk this whole episode about recreation. It's an important part of our community, and I think we've done a great job in looking at that. Another thing that was part of the vision plan and was identified back in 2001 when they were looking this was housing, and certainly housing for our workforce in and around Breckenridge. And boy, we've talked about that a lot lately.
Sure have. But the town made some very important investments back then. As I came in the door, Gary Martinez was leaving, and he had been working with the council and with the school district at that time for Block 11. And the school district was looking to locate Upper Blue there, and we went through a fairly elaborate process, unfortunately a condemnation process, because we couldn't agree exactly on prices and things like that. But we were able to conclude that deal, and because of that, we preserved a large chunk of land related to housing. And then shortly after that, the McCain property became available, which is just north of Coin Valley. So a lot of our early steps were about buying stuff because we had Wellington going really good. And Gibson Heights was being built right about that same time by an early effort by the Housing Authority, and Vista Point. So we had some housing being built at that point for the affordable ranges, but we knew it wasn't going to be enough. So these investments the council made at that point in time are paying huge dividends now because we have actually land to work with to go do some projects that are right on the cusp of either being built or getting ready to be built.
Right.
Yeah. And in the early years, I think the for sale units were the focus of the town, and we saw that as a priority, and it's still a priority today, but we've talked a lot recently about our lack of rental housing, and so I think most of our viewers are probably familiar with what we have going on, but we are getting closer on Pinewood too, and actually this Tuesday the council is going to get a little peek inside to see they have one unit finished and kind of see what it's going to look like. So
great. Yeah, we've got Pinewood 2 coming on board. It's 45 units of rental housing. And we've got Huron Landing that we'll probably break ground on this spring, up County Road 450, out where the recycling center used to be. We're also working on a project called Denison Placer, which is over by the new Colorado Mountain College campus on the north end of the Block 11. And I think all told, 45, 25, that's 70, 60 down there. That's 130 new rental units coming online probably in the next year or two, which is really what we need. And I was part of the council that pulled the trigger on the Wellington neighborhood. For sale was what we wanted. That was their model. And then 4 or 5 years ago, we realized, we didn't quite take care of the rental side. And so now we're trying to really address the rental side with lots of projects.
Yeah. And we want to keep reminding our viewers that we expect within the next 3 weeks that there will be a website launched for Pinewood 2 that's going to inform. We know people are very interested. They're trying to understand where can they get more information on this housing project, and that website will have all the relevant up-to-date information. It will talk to people about how they get their name in on a list for consideration, et cetera. So we want to keep everybody informed on the progress of that. So another item that was on our vision plan, and John alluded to this during our opening, is transportation. And we recognize that it's an issue, and obviously it was an issue in 2001. It's an issue today. I think there's probably some sentiment from people that say, when are you going to finally do something? A lot of people forget a lot of what we have done.
That's right. That's right.
In the last 16 years since that vision plan went up.
Yeah, I would actually rank up as one of the watershed agreement that we entered into, and John alluded to it with Sam Mamula as the mayor, and Roger McCarthy with the CEO, and a council that wanted to do something. They realized that if we didn't address the parking and transportation issues fairly quickly, because at that point, people can't remember maybe this, but Highway 9 was Main Street.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do it with it. You couldn't widen it, you couldn't improve it because it was it was in an historic district. And we were really trying to look at ways that, because we are in a narrow valley with only a few north-south streets, and there was no requirement at that point in time that the ski area had to maintain the parking that they had at that time Sawmill and Watson, we now call North and South Gondola Lot. They could have moved that parking away, and we would have had to have, I don't know where we would have put all the cars at that point in time, but those things were considered so important that those negotiations that Sam and Roger entered into, because it was good for both parties. It was very important that we locked the parking down. They were concerned with locking what they could do up on Peak 8 and Peak 7. John may remember that. It was really key to them knowing what they could build up there. And then, of course, we were working with the CDOT to move Highway 9 over to Park Avenue to give us more flexibility of how we could work with stuff. But at that time, it really wasn't a plan. And I think now, as we've tinkered with things every year, it seems like, making little improvements where we could, even though the problem kept getting worse, we never really we've had several plans, but they were never as comprehensive as what the council is taking on right now. And hopefully that effort will lead to kind of another vision plan that will drive the next 10 years of improvements of what will help at least make the problem not any worse than what it is today, and maybe make it a little bit better.
Right.
Yeah, that's obviously one of those things that we never expected to solve the problem, but it's important that it was, again, another value that was identified, and because it is very important to the character of the community and something we're going to continue to address. Another item that is on our vision plan, and one of those values that was identified, and you probably had something to do with this way back then, was the sustainability. And I think that could easily go down as one of those tenets that John Warner was so adamant about, and but we've had some great things happen.
We have
over the years because of that. So.
Yeah. No, I think, and once again, we had public meetings. I think 3 of them, summer of 2007 or 8. Good attendance, not as big as the visioning sessions, but 150, 120 people at each session. Did breakout groups, and we really came down with ideas about dealing with, first of all, making our carbon footprint smaller. And so we started looking at the low-hanging fruit, light bulbs, things like that. The town took an active interest in it with their green team. We at one point put solar installations on, I think, 9 of our municipal buildings, which reduced our utility fees by at least $100,000, helped a lot. Then we actually had 2 solar gardens built in Breckenridge in 2010 or 11 by private developers, and we are in a kind of a lease purchase with them. We'll likely exercise that purchase here in the next year or two. And we're developing enough electricity for 300 or 400 homes, which is great. And we actually have some excess electricity we may use for the second water treatment facility. So we've reduced our carbon footprint. We've also put a fee on disposable bags. And my understanding is we've reduced the use of disposable bags around the town by at least 35–40%. And we've actually given away or sold 100,000 reusable bags with our cute little Breckenridge design on it that Wilson last put together. And boy, just in 3 years, going to city market is a whole different ballgame. You can tell the tourists from the locals, because the locals all have their reusable bags, and the tourists are getting better at it. And to City Market's credit, their script is better than it used to be. They used to blame it all on Breckenridge, the town is doing this to you. And now they're saying, no, we're trying to do the right thing. We're trying to encourage people to use reusable bags. The shops on Main Street are encouraging people to use reusable bags. So that has been, I think, a great success. The key idea was to reduce the use of disposable bags, and that's what we've done. I wanted to eliminate the use of disposable bags, but I had to step back and say, what's realistic? So the solar gardens, the bags, we have the business sustainability certification program. I think we have 24 businesses that have signed up for that. I've had a sustainable business for several years now. My wife, I even browbeat my wife into doing it. And she actually loves it. We have little stickers on it.
I think actually those numbers are probably double that.
Oh, you think they're more like 48?
Yeah,
well, that's
in
great.
The 40s on that.
And that's a lot of fun for a business to learn how to reduce their energy bill, do the right thing in terms of their waste stream. It's all good, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg, and it's our staff is very willing and able to make good suggestions, as is the staff from High Country Conservation, HC3.
And we're also partnering with HC3 for home energy audits that we've started in the last. I think that more recently that has started in the last few years. It's kind of kicked off, and we're seeing those numbers.
Yeah, that's good.
Those increases.
I would add to that one of the great things about that program is the town and its leaders provided leadership, but they were out there with the business community. They were out there talking to folks, and we didn't have people coming in and saying, government, get out of my life. I don't need to be doing this. Instead, we have a huge outpouring of people that want to do something and want to do the right thing. We don't even have a debate about climate action. About whether or not it's getting warmer. It's about what are we going to be doing if it happens. And so I think it's a great testament to this whole community, the business community and the residential side, that they embraced it and they jumped right on it when the town took the lead.
Yeah. Yep. And then probably besides providing local workforce housing, another sustainability benefit that we've achieved from all of the housing, that's the number of units that's been built. And I wish I could recall, it's this astronomical number of average miles saved daily or weekly, just because now we have these people living in town instead of commuting from out of county or out of town into work. And it's a big number. Yeah,
it's like 50,000 miles a week are saved, something like that. Yeah. And you think of a workforce of, say, 5,000 people moving in and out of our town. If they don't have to drive 10 miles or 20 miles or 40 miles, it keeps a lot of rubber-wheeled vehicles off the highway. It helps with congestion. It's our side of the coin municipally is to try to move our development up and down the valley floor and then provide adequate transit for that valley floor development. And I think we've gotten kudos from outside consultants about how much we've benefited from our workforce housing. We're also trying to create childcare facilities in our community so people that work here can have their child nearby, pick up their child. They don't have to drive 15 miles to go get their child after work. So all that stuff kind of goes hand in hand, and that's something that this council and councils previous have really embraced. I think.
And John alluded to childcare, and I was actually sitting in the childcare advisory committee yesterday, and we're doing some updated research. Apparently, the last time that we kind of did a needs assessment was in 2007, and so looking at what's occurred in the last 8 years from that previous study and what we've done, because Tim, you were a part of, what's been built, what we've helped mobilize with childcare. Has made a big difference in those responses that we're seeing back from the community now. So there's definitely been an impact on that, addressing those needs.
I can even, and John can allude to this, when Carriage House first got created, before my time,
Right.
but it was all nonprofit.
Right.
And then the role of government, as we've recognized how important of that a component that is to the affordable housing strategy, the town took a greater and greater role over time to help those, at least with the infrastructure and the capital side, so that they could operate as low a cost as possible. And the program has matured wonderfully, and because we've been successful at affordable housing and people drink the water, we have kids.
Yeah. Lots of kids.
Lots of kids, and that's great, because that's the future of our community. But if you don't have childcare, how long can they stay here?
Right.
I mean, that's the key to really keeping that character of the communities, which is it's so high on the vision plan. In fact, it's number one.
Right.
Yeah. And I think we're continuing to see that if we didn't have some of those scholarship opportunities available, probably the biggest majority of those people would not be able to afford to stay in this community. Right. And, because we know housing is higher and some of the other costs in that. And so, we'd have a lot of impacts from that.
And Tim's exactly right. We didn't, as government, say, we're going to show you how to run childcare, and we want you to change your philosophy from Montessori to this or whatever. That we helped them with infrastructure. We required that they pay their teachers a living wage, and we created the scholarship program, and we paid off their mortgages. So we just put money into the capital, the human capital, and the concrete, the bricks and mortar, but we didn't lord it over those boards and tell them how to run their businesses. We've given them suggestions, certainly, and there was a little resistance at first, but now they have embraced the help from our government, and it's worked out. It's been a good kind of hand in glove sort of relationship with the housing and the child care.
I'd throw one other thing out there. John and I just returned from Whistler.
Right.
As a kind of a field trip, part of our Colorado Association ski towns. And Whistler is very fortunate because they actually house 79% of their workforce. And at first, if you go around Whistler and you just kind of experience the people that work there and what their attitude is, it's amazing how much happier and just supportive of the community they were, because they didn't have the stress of commuting in, and they didn't have the stress of living in a car because there wasn't enough housing in the community and things like that. So I think that whole concept of community character translates into a very successful business community at the end of the day. Because if you have happy employees, comfortable employees, raising their family where they're not totally stressed out with the cost of living, and it's tough up here, I mean, we absolutely know that, then it just makes the visitor happier, right. And all of a sudden they come back because they love that experience, and all those things build on, which is why the vision plan I think was so critical, is our community recognized those elements as being important to future success.
You had talked about our partnership with the child care centers early on, but I think when we look back over the years, partnerships have been a key component of a lot of what we've done to get things accomplished. And I think when I look at our relationship and our partnership with our what's now the Breckenridge Tourism Office, our Breckenridge Heritage Alliance, and the fairly newly created Breckenridge Creative Arts Group, that sets us apart a little bit from what other communities do. And Tim, maybe you could talk about that, because it's been an evolution over
has
the years.
been, yeah. And I would even go beyond even those nonprofit groups. Our relationship with the county, our relationship with the other towns, starting back when John took over as mayor, even a little before that, it's all about what can you do together as opposed to what do you do separately. And Breckenridge, quite honestly, had a reputation back when I got here. I remember this, the ice rink was a prime example. The council reached out to the other communities and said, we're going to create this recreational amenity, you want to be a part of it? Well, nobody stepped up. So Breckenridge did it by themselves. Well, we've tried not to always do stuff by ourselves now because it really benefits the whole county. But the non-for-profit groups that have taken over these key elements that were internal to the town, the arts group, the Heritage Alliance, we even talked about taking over the marketing. That's how bad it got at times with who, are they doing the right thing? Are they successful? All those type of things. And they have been evolutions, and they haven't been always easy. But the council persevered through the leadership of the mayor and the council. They worked through it, and because of that, I think we have a cultural scene that is going to be unrivaled in mountain towns in Colorado. And certainly our historic preservation is ranked right up there as one of the best in the state of Colorado. And now our BTO, our marketing organization, is up there right now too, where they're just doing great things. And I think those type of efforts by the council to take on the tough topics, wrestle with them, because it's a lot about personalities, it isn't just about the topic, and try to figure out what is the right thing to do. And we're not always perfect, but I think we've done some pretty smart things over time that that the council took on, and were able to get through. And we ended up with a community that healed itself and works well together in spite of some of those tough times.
Yep.
So as I was looking back for this thing, I looked at all of our capital improvement plans over the last 16 years, and certainly we spent a little less money maybe in some of those earlier years than we've spent lately. But I'm curious, John, if there's one or two projects when you look back that maybe stand out as favorites for you.
Well, I think my all-time favorite is the Breckenridge Grand Vacations Community Center. That's the old Colorado Mountain College. The town bought that building and the parking that came with it for a couple of $1 million, and it sat dormant for 3 or 4 years. And the council before this, Mike Dudek in particular, came up with this idea of why don't we turn this into a community building, library, community center, the Speakeasy movie theater, etc. And the restoration transformed the building. I've heard nothing but great things about the building. I spent last Sunday night there at the Speakeasy Theater. It's a wonderful movie theater. It's a wonderful library. It's just the crown jewel of Breckenridge and restoration efforts. But another thing I'm pleased to see that we're doing is the restoration of the Blue River. It's a $5+ million project. It's been restored in bits and pieces from years ago. The Blue River used to be a garbage dump. Spare tires were in there, appliances were in there. It was a dump, and now we've got this fabulous river walk. Moving north, almost to Coin Valley Road, it looks like a river again instead of a gravel pit. And now the town is taking on the remaining 1.5 miles, I think, and really recreating the riparian habitat, the sinuosity of the river. And so I think making our valley floor whole again is just a wonderful project for this community. It truly is taking a lot of money and putting it into the infrastructure. Those are the kind of the big things that I think about, and I'm very happy to see them. But I also think, when I first started on, we were spending a couple $100,000 a year on asphalt resurfacing. Now, the next year we're spending $1.1 million, almost 5 times or over 5 times as much. So in good times, the town really does put their money into infrastructure, which I think is great. We don't balloon our departments with extra personnel. We are very judicious in our sizing of our departments, our compensation. We have a good compensation philosophy, thanks in part to Kate Boniface from years ago. And we are able to function kind of lean and mean, and we got through 2008 through 2010 in really good fiscal shape, thanks to the town staff. So we've done some great things where we've reinvested money at the right time, and then we've pulled back a little bit at the right time. And then in late 2010, we started reinvesting again, when really it was quite inexpensive to start reinvesting in infrastructure. So thanks to Tim, his finance department, Brian Waldis, some amazing people, really. I think, did we lose anybody in that depression, the Great Recession?
No.
We
just had Perkins retire.
That's right. That saved us a bundle. So
yeah, we didn't lay anybody off.
So those two projects, and then the fiscal responsibility and the management of our resources, I think, are things I'm happiest with.
How about you, Tim? Any projects that stand out?
Well, I agree with the Grand Vacations, that is just a spectacular renovation that came out great. And you know, we had an opportunity a number of years before that to work with CMC. And at the time, CMC didn't know where to go. But they wanted to leave the current facility, and we sat down with them, and the council said, we think we can keep them here. Mm-hmm. And we did. And we ended up trading land for a lower price to buy the building. So it translated into a great deal, and it set us up for the opportunity to even look at that building to be a library mm-hmm. at the time. And it was a big one. I think the Arts District is another one with the whole series of buildings. And I would actually also add to what John said. During that recession period when a lot of people were pulling back and doing nothing, the council had the guts to continue with stuff. We continued with Valley Brook, a housing project that at that time, and we wouldn't even know if we could sell the units. It turned out it wasn't a problem, and we moved forward with some of these Arts District projects that we could have waited another 4 or 5 years to get done. But the council said, best time to invest is when you can afford to do it, and we had enough money in the bank to pull that off. And at the same time, we put people to work. And that's forgotten because there wasn't a whole lot of jobs in the county at that point in time. So between us and a couple other governments, Summit County building a couple things, I think we ended up keeping people employed that were fairly important to bridging that time period when there was a loss of a lot of jobs around town.
Yep.
So it all plays off each other in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I look back over the years and what's been accomplished, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that there hasn't been at least hundreds of hours spent in council meetings looking at this evolution of marijuana mm-hmm. within our town.
Yeah, you're right.
And we even probably got a little more national recognition than we wanted at the time, because they were going to create a documentary series, which is out on Netflix now and aired on TV channels and it made for some interesting times. Yeah. But looking back now, I think we're when you look at the amount of time and the regulations and the laws that were created, and we were early on. This was early, and this was Colorado, and we were breaking ground mm-hmm. on a lot of this and became models for many other people. But it made for some interesting meetings over the years.
Sure. Yeah, it was a conflict-filled time. We truly had a split council.
New council.
And there were some emotional meetings, some hurt feelings. But in the final analysis, when the citizens voted and the vote was overwhelming to require the one Main Street business to relocate, most of the council said that's the will of the people, and I'm going with it. Haven't heard really anything since then. We were accused that people threw out the accusation that we were going to ruin this one business, et cetera. Well, that one business moved to Airport Road, flourished, and then sold the business to a franchise, and now they are, I think, in the cultivation business, wholesale business. And so we didn't ruin anybody. Maybe they didn't get as wealthy as they'd hoped, but the marijuana sector of our retail industry it's a small part. In the scheme of things, it's about $7 million a year. We're seeing maybe $500,000 or $600,000 in additional tax revenues because of it, which is all great. And they are a responsible group of business people. Our biggest problem has been our ridership on our buses has tripled out there, and the poor, they're open until 9 o'clock at night. In the winter, people are crossing Airport Road. It's dark, so we've spent a couple $100,000 on new lights, new buses, and but we're at kind of a steady state of satisfaction, I think, with the businesses out there, and the people in town are, I think, for right now, feel good that the community spoke and they moved out to Airport Road. But we were pioneers. We embraced medical marijuana very quickly with lots of rules and regulations. Our town attorney, Tim Gagen, basically got a PhD in how to do that. And then our town kind of surprised me when we voted to legalize possession of 1 ounce or less than 1 ounce back in 2009, decriminalized it. Then the state went for it in 2010, I guess. So we have been at the forefront, lots of telephone interviews, the New York Times in town, the documentary in town, so it has put a spotlight on town. To the documentary's credit, I will say I saw 10 minutes of it last week. My wife has been watching it surreptitiously. I hadn't seen any of it. The cinematography of town is fabulous. Those guys know how to take a picture. So that's all I know.
Could do without the soap opera part.
Right.
And but maybe, we've had a lot of fun with this. We joke how we deal with the stress that goes with it sometimes, but maybe the best news is that we really haven't seen a big impact.
No.
Many people thought back 7 years ago that it was going to ruin the economy and the tourists weren't going to come, and it hasn't been the case.
Not at all.
We thought we were going to have a lot of open consumption of people using and smoking out in public, and that really hasn't been the case. And so
I think, to a large extent, when you think back, and John goes back a lot farther than I do, the community was known as kind of a on-the-edge type of place. Drugs were certainly a part of that, and kids came here. The young kids, it was a part, but it was always under control, it seemed like. And I hear stories back in the 60s where it was a little bit out of control. But when you look at the customer at the end of the day, it's not the kids.
Right.
They've always done it. It's those visitors, and it happens to be visitors at our age group, that are the ones that are revisiting this phenomenon that we all grew up with in the 70s, which is kind of fascinating to me. And because of that, it's not a problem. These people are pretty responsible. I mean, alcohol is sometimes a bigger problem than pot has ever been related to what we've done. And it maybe reinforces the old theory that a lot of people had, that if you tax it, regulate it, and make it legal, you can do a better job than if you just make it illegal and everybody just has to do it inappropriately, and they get busted and ruin their lives because of that. But at the same time, not everybody agrees with that, so that balance in the community is so critical. And that was a tough one for the council.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked a lot about accomplishments, and I think things that our viewers are able to see on a daily basis out there. But, a big part of accomplishing things and running local government is the staff and the people that it takes to run our recreation and our community development and our public works and police. And at times the city is growing, the town's growing, and we have up to 400 employees at different times of the year working now with our seasonal part-times, different group in the winter, different group in the summer, and then our full-time regulars. And one thing that has stuck out for me when I looked at this is I think we've done a great job because we've always instilled back when Tim started early this leadership model of what was important, of the culture that we want to develop to work within the town. And being somebody that's worked in that environment for 15 years, that's secondary. It's really secondary. I mean, it's just right there to us now. It's not something we have to think about. It's become a standard course of action for us. And I think, that was something that got started shortly after you came on board, too.
Right. In fact, again, Kate Boniface was one of the catalysts, Sherilyn Gorley, but it really was the employees. I mean, we went to the employees as opposed to saying, you're going to do this. And sometimes that's the worst management technique you can do. But we already had great people, and we knew that. And I walked into an organization that was already very creative, very, very dedicated, and they took the bull by the horns and said, we want to be better. We want to take that next step. We want to show people, the community, to the people outside, that we are leaders, that we take responsibility for what we do. We take challenges, we take risk. And the council, to their credit, and the mayors over time have always supported that. And they've realized that when you take a chance, you're sometimes going to not do it right. And nobody got beat up terribly. Occasionally a little bit, but but by and large, they were totally supportive of a group of people that put in a ton of time and a lot of hours to get it all done. I stack our employee group up against anybody in the state of Colorado. And I've worked in other communities, some very good people, but as a whole group, their dedication and their willingness to take on the challenges and then grow within the organization, which is sometimes tough in a small organization. 400 sounds like a lot of people, but when you really look at the full-time people, we're looking at about 150. And there isn't a whole lot of growth that they can do within those things. And the willingness to pay well, to keep good people, and to let them go do their job, I think is a credit to the leadership on our council, which has been fairly strong all that 16 years that I can remember.
Well, as we start to wrap this session up here, when I look back at what we've been talking about and what's happened in the past 16 years, if I was grading this, I would give you both A's, okay? So good job. Thanks. But it doesn't end here.
Right.
And your tenure as mayor is coming to an end, John, but that doesn't mean you're going away, but we are going to have a new leadership and some new council people in there. And what do you see on the near horizon for this the new group coming on?
Well, I have some visions and some hopes, and they're kind of intertwined. I'd like to see, and I think I will see, this continued progressive reinvestment into our infrastructure. Not just build a new water plant, but see how it can serve the community, how it can serve the environment. Continue to engage the community. Coffee Talk is something that Tim and you and I have done many times, and the community loves that. All of a sudden our crowds are big now. We can't really talk to everybody, but I would like to see the future council continue to do that. I'd also like to see the future council have a high level of presence in the community. We don't have all the answers as elected officials, and listening to the citizens, engaging with the citizens, whether it's at the committee level, welcoming groups to the community. My hope, I don't know if this is a vision yet, but my hope is that the future councils will continue to do that they'll continue to create a face for town government. And then lastly, you and I saw it, we all saw it, there was a fair amount of opportunity for really a lack of civility at council chambers, meetings, etc. And we maintained a high level of civil discourse. And I would like to see that continue. And the crop of candidates I see is likely to continue that. Because the public sometimes is very, they're anxious when they come to a council meeting. They don't want to say anything. It's not comfortable. And so I want the public to feel that it's likely to be a civil setting. And I want the council to feel that. Sometimes when you're in the council and you got a room full of people, you're like, oh, well, how's this going to go? And I'd like the future council to feel confident that it will likely be a very civil process. So those are the 3 or 4 things that I look for the new council.
And Tim, you may be retiring, but Breckenridge is going to be home for you. And
it is.
I know you're still going to be very interested in what's happening, and this is your community. And so do you have final thoughts as we transition into this new group?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is councils train councils, and we do a good job there. And staff helps council. We want people to come in prepared, ready to work, ready to take on the key issues. I mean, sometimes as elected officials, you are accosted everywhere, but that's what our community is all about. I mean, that's why it's as successful and as friendly and as welcoming as it is. And taking on tough topics takes leadership. And hopefully leadership will continue that way. And because this council and every council that I've worked with, particularly under John's reign the last 8 years, they took on stuff. They didn't wait and let's put it off for a year and talk about it a year from now. And it wasn't always easy. It wasn't always non-painful. But that I think is important. And obviously the support of the people that make it all happen, the employees, keeping in mind the broader community. One of the things that I really have harped on, I guess, and as I've thought about leaving and getting done with this whole thing, and I think John is the epitome. And John, in my mind, when you look at his years in the community and how he's looked at the community and how I have him as a representative of an awful lot of people in the community, welcome people and embrace people to become a part of the community very quickly. And I felt that when I first came here. Fairly unique for a manager because sometimes you're the hired gun, so you kind of come in. But John is the epitome of community character. It's about living the life. It's about making a living the life. It's about great friends. It's about, a lot of people working together and trying to get stuff done and having that pulse that makes this place so unique, so that we're not an Aspen, we're not a Vale. We'll always be a Breckenridge. And we see little pieces of that chips at that with newcomers that maybe don't quite embrace it the way the old timers do and even the young timers. I think there'll always be a battle between are we going too far forward and going backwards to the past, and there's always some of that talk. I wish it was like the bonfire or whatever. But if they can embrace a guy like John Warner and what he's done for his life in this community, and I can name a bunch of other people that we know very, very well that have served and things like that, this community will be well served. And it will remain a unique community that I love and that I don't want to leave unless I have to leave because of some other problems like health or something like that. And very few places I can say that about. Yep. Breckenridge is it.
Yep. Well said. I want to thank you both for taking the time to be here today, and more importantly, I want to thank you for everything that you have done for this community.
Thanks.
And I want to thank you as our viewers for joining us here today, and we'll look forward to speaking with you at our next episode of Breck Buzz.